Se la va a cargar la... A ver, las tenemos ubicadas. Tírate al piso. Tírate al piso,
June 2023, the CJNG cartel releases a chilling video on social media in which escorts are refusing to pay the cartel their dues and are subjected to a humiliating punishment on camera. These are Mexican cartel's most brutal punishments ever recorded. April 2023, a chilling act of violence sent fear through northern Sinaloa, Mexico, as the cartel targeted the youths of rural communities of Ahome and El Fuerte and punished them in a way they wouldn't easily forget. They even made sure to record everything on video. The young men, known as macheteros, have been engaging in brutal clashes, wielding machetes and challenging rivals in deadly confrontations. Their fights, often erupting during local festivities, have left behind a trail of blood and fear. Now the cartel was fed up with this and decided to deal with it in their own way. Law enforcement did nothing to check these reckless youths who were terrorizing these communities, so things only got out of control. A faction of the notorious Sinaloa cartel, identifying themselves as the Special Forces of La Chapiza, stepped in with a grim message, saying they wouldn't tolerate this reckless violence. A recently surfaced video captures 5 young men from the Ranchito community standing defiantly with machetes, openly challenging their rivals. Hours later, another video emerges. This time, the same young men were in the custody of the cartel.
Como una lección.
Forced to endure savage beatings, humiliation, and psychological torment, they were ordered to kiss each other as their captors filmed every moment. The cartel operatives, clad in vests inscribed with the FEDH insignia, made their stance clear. Anyone who dares to incite violence in their territory will meet a similar fate or worse. Sinaloa, a state already in turmoil from internal wars within powerful cartels, has seen thousands of people killed or vanished. And now with organized crime asserting their dominance not just in drug trafficking, but in local order, the lines between law, lawlessness, and survival continue to blur.
Los reportes de la prensa, los 53 sujetos habrían sido secuestrados el fin de semana en un pueblo de la Costa Grande de Guerrero.
September 2019, in Guerrero, Mexico, a shocking video now circulating online shows heavily armed men torturing and executing a group of captives in a chilling display of dominance. This act was a brutal punishment and a message to those who dared the cartel. The initial report said the civilians were innocent, but authorities later stated they were members of rival criminal factions. Filmed under the cover of darkness, this video captures the horrifying moments as assailants laugh while beating their captives. Some victims show signs of severe mutilation, their bodies discarded near shallow graves, likely dug in preparation for their deaths. And we know such videos are commonly used by cartels to instill fear and send warnings to their enemies. This gruesome incident reportedly took place over the weekend in a coastal village, though officials haven't confirmed the exact location. Guerrero has long been a battleground for organized crime, with many syndicates vying for control of drug routes, illicit businesses, and more. Authorities believe the latest massacre is linked to an ongoing territorial war between these cartels. Back then, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's administration responded to the escalating violence by deploying approximately 70,000 National Guard members across the country. However, cartels continue to operate with impunity, using social media to showcase their gruesome acts. July 4th, 2023, 6 bodies, which included 4 men and 2 women, were discovered near the Topo Chico stream in Apodaca, Nuevo León. Around 2:30 a.m., gunfire shattered the silence of the residential Palmas neighborhood. Startled by the shots, residents alerted authorities. When security forces arrived, they found the victims dumped in a remote area. Initially, investigations suggested the killers transported them in 2 vehicles before carrying out the execution. Spent shell casings from multiple firearms indicated a coordinated attack, pointing to an organized crime hit. The victims, estimated between 30 and 35 years old, showed clear signs of torture. Their hands were bound, they were barefoot, and each had been executed with a single gunshot to the back of the head. The scene was really a chilling display of cartel punishment. Just hours after the bodies were discovered, Nuevo Leon's Secretary of Government, Javier Navarro, addressed the growing crisis. He called this alarming and linked it to the ongoing turf wars. Security Secretary Gerardo Palacios Pamanes later confirmed that some of the victims had tattoos and initials associated with organized crime, a strong indication that this was either an internal purge or a ruthless warning. Authorities have launched an investigation, but no suspects have been identified or even arrested.
El negocio de las escort tiene dueño, CJNG, y se tiene que reportar cada semana.
June 2023, a shocking video surfaces on social media showing masked gunmen forcing a group of terrified women to kneel on the ground. These men were said to be members of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, as they had their initials displayed on their tactical vests. They held the women at gunpoint, issuing threats and demanding loyalty. In fact, one of the men pressed a pistol to one of the women's heads as she pled for her life.
No vayas a disparar. Sí. No vayas a disparar.
The armed man then responded coldly.
This is so you know. The owner of the escort business is CJNG.
The video is believed to have been recorded in the Mexican state of Guanajuato, a region that has become one of the country's most violent battlegrounds. The CJNG is one of the most brutal criminal organizations in the world, locked in this crazy war with the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel. And both these groups are fighting over drug trafficking, fuel theft, and extortion. Authorities haven't confirmed the video's exact location, but they do acknowledge the cartel violence and the area is escalating. The gunmen in the video make it clear all women working in bars and nightclubs must pay for cartel protection. Those who comply will receive a bracelet to prove their payment. Those who refuse will receive severe punishment, possibly death. This isn't new. Cartels have been using similar tactics in human smuggling operations, tagging migrants with bracelets to track their movements and payments. Cartels in Mexico have now expanded their operations far beyond drug trafficking. Extortion, kidnapping, and control over local businesses have become their new sources of power. According to security analyst David Sacedo,
The level of cartel control is only growing.
some of these groups are even issuing stickers or signs to businesses that have paid extortion fees. Their system ensures that those who pay are protected, and those who refuse are marked for retaliation. Small businesses aren't spared from this brutality either. In Guanajuato and the southern state of Guerrero, cartels have burned down tortilla shops for failing to pay protection fees or even dealing with a rival gang. Tortillas in Mexico sell for as little as 65 cents per pound. Yet cartels still demand their cut, no matter how small the profits. The violence extends beyond extortion, though. In the recent months, Guanajuato has witnessed horrifying attacks on bars and nightclubs. In one case, gunmen had stormed a nightclub in Apaseo El Hato, opening fire and leaving behind handwritten messages signed by the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel. Now, the message accused the club's owners of supporting the CJNG. Pictures from the scene showed lifeless bodies of waitresses in pools of blood. Guanajuato has become a war zone, with mass killings, kidnappings, and executions becoming a grim reality. The battle between CJNG and Santa Rosa de Lima has turned everyday life into a nightmare.
Mi nombre es Carlos Enrique Sánchez Martínez, alias El Cholo, originario de Guadalajara, Jalisco.
March 18th, 2021, another disturbing video depicting Carlos Enrique Sanchez Martinez, known as El Cholo, once a formidable figure in Mexico's cartel hierarchy. And here we see that he's humiliated and punished to send a broad message to any other traitor. In the footage, El Cholo is subdued, encircled by masked individuals believed to be members of the CJNG, the very organization he had previously been a part of. This would mark a significant and terrible chapter in Mexico's ongoing conflicts with cartels. El Cholo had risen to prominence within the CJNG, operating as a second hand to Nemesio Osegueda Cervantes, or El Mencho. Together, they expanded the cartel's influence across Mexico. However, in 2017, tensions escalated when El Cholo allegedly ordered the assassination of Marcos Hernandez, a guy cooking books for the CJNG. Now, this was an act perceived as betrayal by El Mencho, leading to El Cholo's departure from the CJ&G and the formation of his new cartel, Nueva Plaza, with ambitions to challenge his former boss. The rivalry between the CJ&G and Nueva Plaza intensified, resulting in numerous violent confrontations, particularly in Guadalajara. El Cholo's defection and subsequent actions were seen as a direct affront to El Mencho's authority, setting the stage for a brutal retaliation. In a video released on March 18th, El Cholo's confessing to orchestrating various violent incidents, including the creation of mass graves in areas like Tonalá, Tlaquepaque, and Tlaomulco, while also ratting out high-ranking police officers who'd helped him. He also admitted to the attack on the U.S. consulate in Guadalajara and the massacre of 11 construction workers in Tonalá. That's not all. El Cholo had some final words.
Me dijo que ocupaba algo relevante para poder dejarse caer aquí a la ciudad, toda su gente o el apoyo que iba a mandarme.
Following the video circulation, authorities discovered a body wrapped in plastic in Ardín Hidalgo, a park near Tlaquepaque City Hall. Now, the body was marked with a note that read,
"The traitor, El Cholo."
Subsequent investigations also showed that this was Carlos Enrique Sanchez Martinez. According to an autopsy carried out by authorities, El Cholo had been mercilessly beaten, with his ribs broken, his toes were and his tongue was removed. The coroner also discovered 3 gunshot wounds to the head, which they believed had finally killed him.
De todos ellos estaban hincados, atados de pies y manos y recibieron el tiro de gracia en la cabeza. 2 de estas personas ya fueron identificadas.
August 2024, the video of the massacre of 6 men in Zitácuaro, Michoacán surfaced. Corpses of these men had been found earlier, and the video was even more chilling. The victims were forced to kneel, their hands and feet bound, before being executed with a shot to the head. The video now circulating online has intensified fears about the growing brutality of cartel warfare in the region. 2 of the victims have already been identified. Reports say they were robbers, but their execution raises deeper concerns about their actual connections between criminal groups and corrupt officials as more details emerge. Reportedly, the victims were connected to Conrado Corral Leyva, the former regional commissioner of the state's Civil Guard. Corral Leyva has been accused of extorting police officers under his command, forcing them to pay fees to remain in their positions. But his alleged crimes go deeper. Public banners known as narcomantas were displayed in the area, directly linking Corral Leyva to El Barbas, a high-ranking member of the CJ&G. According to these messages, El Barbas paid Corral Leyva for protection, ensuring cartel operations could continue unchecked. If true, we have yet another example of high-level corruption enabling cartel dominance.
Nombre?
September 2011, a disturbing video was uploaded by the Sinaloa cartel. This would be a live stream of 2 employees of the cartel being punished as a stern warning to other employees. The footage shows the execution of 2 men, Barnabas Gomez Castro and his nephew, Felix Gomez Garcia, who'd been serving as drug mules. Barnabas and Felix were tasked with transporting narcotics from Mexico to California, a dangerous job that offered little financial benefit. Reports say that these people get paid around 300 pesos, which is around $15 per trip. Now, the video began with both men seated shirtless against a bare wall, flanked by masked individuals brandishing rifles. Despite the gravity of this situation, Barnabas and Felix appeared calm. Some speculated they might have been under the influence of drugs, while others believed they had just resigned themselves to their fate. During a brief interrogation, Felix issued a strong warning.
Pórtense bien, si miran algo cállense y van a estar tranquilos. Ya nosotros qué, ya nosotros ya valimos verga y pues a lo que falta más para adelante pues que se pongan abusados.
Following the interrogation, the cartel proceeded with the execution. Using a chainsaw, Felix was decapitated first. Chainsaw executions had become a signature for El Chapo's enforcers, symbolizing the extreme violence they were willing to employ. Surprisingly, Barnabas didn't even show any emotion throughout his nephew's execution. In fact, he didn't even flinch when the chainsaw's blade grazed his arm. After Felix's death, Barnabas was taken out with a knife, a slower, more deliberate method to prolong his suffering and heighten the video's gruesome impact. It later was revealed that Felix had been arrested by U.S. law enforcement before his mysterious death. On June 17, 2011, in Phoenix, Arizona, on charges related to drug distribution and transportation, he was using the alias Paulino Gomez Garcia, and Felix managed to post a substantial bail of $20,000, which was surprising, given the reported low earnings from the cartel. This led to the cartel suspecting that Felix and his uncle may have accessed cartel funds for his release, or possibly cooperated with U.S. authorities by leaking information. 2010 was a dirty, violent chapter in Mexico's drug war between El Chapo's Sinaloa cartel and the Juarez cartel. You see, during that war, Guzman unveiled his cruelest torture method, peeling the faces off of those unfortunate to fall into his hands. January 2010, news in Mexico breaks a story that leaves the nation shook. A mutilated body, dismembered into numerous pieces, had been discovered, but the true horror was the fate of the victim's face. January 2nd, 2010, El Chapo captured Hugo Hernandez, a man of considerable influence within the Juarez cartel. Now, El Chapo's revenge would be a meticulously planned torture and execution, as he subjected Hernandez to an unimaginable fate in an unknown location. With Hernandez bound and helpless, El Chapo puts the chainsaw closer to his face. This thing tears through Hernandez's face, severing it from his head in the most brutal way you could imagine. And then Chapo thought it'd be great to carefully peel the skin in order to keep the facial features intact. But then he would also proceed to stretch and stitch that skin on a soccer ball. This death ball, now bearing Hernandez's frozen expression of terror, really served as a warning to not mess with this cartel. El Chapo told his men to put the ball in a public space where it would be easily discovered. When the police had found it on the steps of City Hall the next day, it was accompanied by a taunting message, wishing Hernandez a
Happy New Year, because this'll be your last.
The remainder of Hernandez's body, including his torso, was then found in a plastic container in the town of Los Mochis, Sinaloa, where another box contained his arms, legs, and skull. October 27, 2020, the CJNG broadcasts a live torture and execution that remains to this day one of the most horrific acts ever streamed online. The footage was so gruesome that communities on platforms like Reddit cautioned users against seeking out the video. The victim is Ghost Rider, a notorious hitman from the Cartels Unidos, a coalition of smaller gangs. Now, he was infamous for his own ruthless methods, showing no mercy as he employed barbaric techniques to eliminate his targets. For a period, the Cartels Unidos and CJNG were embroiled in a violent conflict in Alaguay, turning the town into one of Mexico's most perilous areas, marked by relentless displays of extreme violence. This one time, he brutally killed a father and his young son, mutilating their bodies beyond recognition. But he didn't stop there. He set the child's remains on fire, a really sick demonstration of his own power and dominance. Things like this shocked even the most hardened individuals. Law enforcement would also not be spared from his brutality. On one occasion, Ghost Rider captured a young police officer and subjected him to this horrifying torture. Dismembering him slowly and meticulously, he would seem to revel in the suffering of others, never anticipating that maybe one day he might endure a fate more gruesome than any he had inflicted. On October 17, 2020, after many attempts, the CJNG finally apprehended Ghost Rider, bringing him face to face with the consequences of his own murderous lifestyle. Instead of an immediate execution, instead of killing him right away, they took him to a secluded ranch near Tepalcatepec, a common practice amongst cartels for high-profile captives. The CJNG were about to send their own message. The video, which was too graphic for YouTube, showed Ghost Rider bound and visibly terrified, yet he attempted to face his fate with a semblance of bravery, hoping for a swift end maybe. Process began with an injection of adrenaline. This is so he doesn't lose consciousness during a prolonged torture. With the adrenaline coursing through his veins, Ghost Rider was subjected to a nightmare beyond his worst imaginings. The tormentors poured alcohol all over his face, ensuring that only his face was drenched, and then ignited it. His agonized screams filled the air as he became a human torch. Albeit briefly, as the alcohol burnt off quickly, his face was then left red and distorted. But this was merely the beginning. They repeated this over and over. At some point, the flame flame had spread to his crotch, igniting his trousers, and as the fire subsided, Ghost Rider's face was left charred, exposing flesh and bone, with his lips gone, only revealing his teeth. The CJ&G members had laughed, making macabre jokes, with one commenting on his resemblance to the fictional Ghost Rider portrayed by Nicolas Cage. Amazingly, despite the severe injuries and blood loss, Ghost Rider remained conscious, attempting to beg for mercy. The torment went on, with repeated burnings until eventually, even the adrenaline couldn't sustain his life any longer. To this day, this is one of the most horrifying videos ever produced by Mexican cartels. April 2007, YouTube takes off a disturbing video by a user named Mata Zetareo. It was the execution of a man associated with Los Zetas, a very violent Mexican drug cartel. The Sinaloa cartel and Los Zetas had been engaging in a fierce battle for dominance. We had El Chapo's Sinaloa, known for their extensive drug trafficking operations. On the other side, Los Zetas were formed by ex-Mexican special forces, and they had a reputation for some extreme violence and intimidation tactics. Ironically, the Sinaloa cartel justified its violent quest against Los Zetas by declaring that it was an act of patriotism, and they would even encourage all other Mexicans to join in and get rid of these guys. So while both groups had caused immeasurable suffering to Mexican society, Sinaloa said it was the lesser evil. In one of their most symbolic battles, Sinaloa forces capture one of Heriberto Lascano's hitmen. Now, Lascano was one of the most feared leaders of Los Zetas, really notorious for his deadly tactics and alleged role in the Acapulco massacre. In the video, an unseen interrogator is asking a question.
Were you involved in the Acapulco killings?
At first, he initially acted like a tough guy, refusing to answer any questions, but this only made his torture worse. After several beatings, he became more cooperative and confessed that he carried out the massacre. Afterward, the sicario was stripped of his underwear and tied to a chair. Across his chest would be a freshly drawn letter Z, mocking the Los Zetas symbol. And to prove they indeed captured the right person, the camera revealed the word Lascano etched into the man's leg. Then came the worst part of the live stream, the beating. And what did they use, class? That's right, a chainsaw. As the video ended, the final message appeared in blood red, delivering an unmistakable warning to Lascano.
You're next.
September 2019, another disturbing video shows a man being attacked by a pit bull under the orders of cartel members. The video was sent out there to prove that the cartel was in charge of the law in this community. Now we see this guy accused of sexual assault, restrained, and subjected to a brutal act. The assailants, believed to be part of a Mexico City drug cartel, appeared to be delivering their form of vigilante justice. Now this guy, reportedly in his 20s or 30s, had been accused of raping a young woman. Despite her reporting the crime, local authorities allegedly provided minimal support, and the case went cold for months. Eventually, the cartel intervened, luring this man to a secluded location under the guise of a business meeting. There, they started live streaming. During this session, the restrained man was attacked by a pit bull, directed specifically to his lower body. His pleas for mercy were met with mockery, with one cartel member stating,
"This is what happens to those who violate women. This scum will never harm anyone again."
The video, though quickly removed, was widely shared across social media platforms. Now, this just proves the brutal methods cartels employ to assert control and dispense their version of justice, especially in places where the official justice system is perceived as ineffective. In many Mexican regions, locals often rely on cartels for security and justice, just like the mafia, viewing them as de facto authorities. It's no surprise that Mexico has been struggling with increasing public outrage over violence against women, which frequently goes unaddressed by authorities. Movements like the Glitter Revolution have emerged in response to the country's femicide crisis, marked by daily reports of women being murdered, raped, or disappearing. As a result, when you can't trust law enforcement, who you gonna trust? Communities sometimes have to go with what's left.